Thank you so much for joining us here this Saturday morning. And I know that every single one of you, when you did your devotions this morning, asked that the rain just get extended and play a little bit. That's what you asked for, wasn't it? So Lord willing, that is what happened. Let me just introduce myself. My name is Michael Van Pelt, and I'm the new chair of the Fair Havens Board of Directors. And I'm not exactly sure how I got to that spot, but let me share the story with you. I was brought on to assist with the transition between Fair Havens being part of the AGC and under the responsibility of the AGC board toward an independent board of directors, which I now chair. And then secondly, to work with the philanthropist, John and Jenny Halting, to help transition that gift effectively into Fair Havens. And I'm really looking forward. John and Jenny are actually here, are going to be here in about a half hour, and I'd love to introduce them to you, and I'll do that later on. So Michael Van Pelt is part of a 1950s Dutch immigrant story. I come from a large family of 8. There was no yelling in our household at all. I'm a middle child, so I'm the negotiator that really holds no opinions and holds everyone's opinions. And but I was steeped and taught in the Word. My mother is a godly woman who always, as I walked out the door, said, "Michael, don't forget to serve the Lord today." That oftentimes made me angry and frustrated when she told me that, but somehow it lived in my heart. And that mothering godliness has informed much of my life and my work. My day job, I work for a faith-based think tank 3 doors down from Parliament in Ottawa called Cardis. And so I wake up every morning trying to see how we can influence this country, which is increasingly becoming secularized, to have some kind of understanding that the gospel, that this wonderful Christian faith actually has some really good to offer society in a more, in a broader way. So that's what I wake up and do on every day. Before I've asked Eduardo to do devotions with us just to start the meeting, but I want to just recognize a few highlight people here. And right off the bat, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to welcome Liz Thompson. Voila! As many of you know, Liz has just retired and moved to a wonderful new home, which I've seen pictures of, close to her family in Belleville. Her daughter is with her today. Once we have settled a bit more and weeks bring a little bit normality to all of you and to Liz, we look forward to a more wholesome retirement celebration for Liz, essentially giving joy and thanksgiving, Liz, for really putting your stamp on this organization. I was trying to think of the word that would, and it's Liz putting her stamp on this camp for the time that she's been here. And Liz, on a personal level, you have dealt with me in this transition period of time with such grace and with such dignity, probably in one of the most difficult times the camp has had. Pandemics don't come along often, thankfully. And the leadership that you've had to give during that time isn't always conducive to having grace and dignity. And you did it consistently, and we're grateful for that. Benita and Liz, would you come on up for a minute? We just have something before the bigger celebration down the road. Oh, this is just a little start, Liz.
Well, I really missed all of you.
We miss you.
This is the day the Lord has made. I'm glad in it because of health issues, turning 70, and when my friends dropped dead at the age of 70. Things just started happening that I really felt God called me elsewhere. So right now I work part-time just in the summer at Wesley Acres Christian Camping in the office. So Cheryl Martin called me this week and I couldn't believe I was answering the phone. But God is good and this is such a wonderful day. Thank you for blessing John and I and our family for so many years.
50 years at Fair Havens, and there's going to be a lot more on that shortly. Gord, where are you? I saw you. Okay, no repairs, no Bible studies in the next hour, okay, no fixing this, just, Marilyn, can you help him just kind of sit there and relax for a little bit of time? Okay, everyone just keep an eye on this gentleman. I got to know Gord a little bit over this time, and the man does not stop, so we've got to watch him right now. And then I want to introduce John Friesen and Ed Heinrichs. Many of you have met both of them. Many of you know John. They'll be coming up later on to help us think through and discuss the strategic plan. Essentially, the board of directors have brought on John and Ed to do a number of things. Number one, help us in the leadership transition at Fair Havens. Number two, work with the board and the staff and all the stakeholders to develop a new strategic plan for Fair Havens, remembering our history, remembering our existing mission, and looking toward what renewal will look like. And both of them are godly men. Both of them are men who've got experience in this kind of space. Now, obviously, John knows this Fair Havens intimately as well. So, as a board of directors, we were just absolutely delighted that they would come and join us in this effort. And then I want to introduce Malcolm Wildeboer, our architect. In many ways, this is the gentleman we really want to see. I'm really wanting to see what you've got coming, Malcolm. He is tasked to design the new master plan for Fair Havens. And I know Malcolm is so eager to chat with every single one of you and just get your ideas. And we'll talk a little bit about that later. Malcolm will introduce you more fully later on. John and Jenny are on their way. John and Jenny Hulting are on their way here yet. They're just a little bit late. But before they do, they're not the type to want to come up to the front. But I wanted to just say a few words about them. In a sense, the Hulting family in Fair Havens, in my view, is this wonderful act of God's providence. I've known John for 20 years, and for the last 10 years, he has spoken many times about wanting to get behind a camp. And it was really based on his passion for the gospel. And his passion for the gospel was this mental kind of idea that he was thinking of, saying, you know what, in an increasingly secularized environment, it is still going to be the camp. It is going to be the Christian Bible camp that is going to be able to open up the gospel to new generations, to other generations, through families bringing other families, through young people, through a next generation, that kind of thing. And that is what has animated him for many, many years. And the providential work of our Lord to bring Hulting together with Fair Havens in a really nice story is exactly that. When they come, Malcolm, I might interrupt you just to that we can kind of say hello to them as they come in. I do want to just say hello to one of our board members, Phil. Where is Phil? I saw you. Okay, Phil McConnell sitting there. I know Bill Allen was going to be here as well today. Another one of our board members, also head of AGC. But Bill has kind of thrown his back out, and so I just kind of laughed at him and said, Bill, just relax, don't move too much, and you know what, you can kind of think about us and pray for us from your home. And then, you know what, let's give a big hand to our, just so many staff members, especially Benita and Tara. Where did I see Tara? Oh, Tara at the back there, Gord, so many others holding up the board. I get reasonable access to a lot of the behind-the-scenes email, and this has not been an easy task during this period of time. There's always a little tension alive, kind of physical uncomfortableness, all those kind of things that, so let's just give them a big hand of applause. So, just before, you know what? I'll outline the purpose of the meeting. Ed, why don't you just come on up right now, and then we'll talk about what we're going to go through in the meeting and just do devotions to be able to start our morning. Thank you.
Glad to do that. It is a privilege to be with you this morning, and Michael, you made the comment, how did I get here? Well, I know who to hold personally responsible for the fact that I'm here, and that would be John Friesen and then Michael Van Pelto. But it is a privilege to be a part of this gathering. And I want to encourage us with some words that have really challenged me. Is that still functioning, Brian? Or do I grab the other mic? Sounds like I'm back. with some words that have really challenged me. In that this past Monday, I spoke at the funeral of a very close friend who was 41 years old. Suddenly killed in front of his home, basically. He left behind a wife and 3 young children. And when she called me, she said, "Can you speak on this text out of 1 Corinthians chapter 3? And as I've been kind of reflecting on that, I thought it's also very appropriate to this context and what God is doing here. Because he was a man who lived on mission, and Fair Havens is built on the foundation of mission. Michael, your words were so appropriate in terms of the gospel message and how camps are strategically located to reach new generations with the message of Jesus Christ. And so I want to reflect just very briefly on the words that the Apostle Paul wrote in his letter to Corinth, where he says, "By God's grace, by the grace God has given me, I laid a foundation as an expert builder, and someone else is building on it. But each one should be careful how he builds." And I think that's appropriate to this season. We're going to be hearing from Malcolm, an architect. We're going to be talking about building. But as we do, let's never confuse what is happening here with the fact that there's a bigger building project at work here. It's going to be about structures and buildings, but the foundation that has been laid is Jesus Christ. The building that is happening is actually a covert operation, if you will. And I've seen that in action already as we were here yesterday, and I saw families on the beach building relationship. I saw people connecting with each other in sports activities. I was out there the other day leading some activity, building community. And all of that unto something even bigger, and that is building the kingdom of God in this place. So I want to challenge you in the way that I have recently been challenged in a very emotionally raw state, to be challenged with the fact that this is not about me, and if I may be so bold as to say it's not about you. It's about God at work in and through us to build his kingdom. Is that worth living for? Is that worth sacrificing for? Is that worth setting our own rights and ideas aside for, to agree together, this is pleasing to God? And we will do this because it's worth investing our lives in. And so as you think about this, pray into that. Pray for the board, because they have been duly appointed and authorized by God to lead into a new season, a new vision, building on a foundation that was laid 80 years ago. And God will build. He is sovereign over COVID. He's sovereign over tornadoes that blow through this neighborhood and somehow miss this place. And may God continue to extend his grace, which is undeserved favor. And let's live in and under that grace, submitting ourselves to him and trusting him to do more than we could ask or imagine. Can I pray? Father, these words are true today, that there's only one foundation that can be laid, that has been laid, and that is Jesus Christ, Lord over all. It's in him that we live, move, and have our being. And so we just submit even this conversation this morning to you and ask that you would be Lord over that, over Fair Havens, past, present, and future. God, we pray for wisdom, for clarity, for discernment, and we also pray for unity, because that is a mark of your people, unified under the lordship of Jesus Christ. And we thank you in advance for what you're going to do, because you are good. Amen. Wonderful.
So let me just outline a little bit of the purpose, or as it were, the agenda of the meeting. Number one, so really if we kind of capture it thematically, a little bit of part work, okay, let's get down to work here, folks, and a little bit part celebration. That's kind of the picture of the overall time together. So, number one, I am going to give the floor over to John and to Ed, just to talk a little bit from a strategic planning point of view, and a call for your own input toward them to help them. That's number one. Number two, we are going to have a presentation from Malcolm on the early development stages of our master plan. Obviously, that is going to be the lion's share of the meeting itself. And then third, we're going to have some celebrating to do. So again, Gord, stay close by. You're doing pretty good. No repairs, no Bible study to lead, no service to minister at, no staff to mentor, at least for the next hour. And then you have to kind of do that after, then it's all like bets are off after that, Gord. So that's going to be exciting. And then we're going to have just a short question and answer period as well. And then after that, we are going to have a reception. There is a cake. And at that point in time, I'm really interested in, I would love to meet as many of you as possible. I know Ed would like to do that, and John, and especially Malcolm would like to meet you and just hear from you what your thinking is, especially kind of coming out of this presentation. I'll get into that introduction a little bit later on. But let's remind ourselves, ladies and gentlemen, that we need to have a mindset of thankfulness and persistence. I think that's the best way of looking at 8 years of celebration of Fair Havens. There is no doubt, as I already said, the COVID pandemic caused one of the most challenging years facing Fair Havens. So think about this, 2019, 2020, and 2021 are all marked by this significant global event, and in some ways defined by that. But it is not just challenge, it's not just stress, it's not just financial restraints. Somewhere underneath that, I think we're all sensing, yes, there's a sense of resilience. We are strong, and we know why we are strong. And a sense of reflection, and even maybe a sense of readiness. So no doubt our celebrations are muted, yet there's anticipation on the horizon. Joyfulness will return, animated from the wells of grace gifted to us through our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. So without further ado, John and Ed, can you come up and do just a quick shout out and review of strategic planning and your work with the board and with all of our stakeholders?
I'm getting some messaging for maybe they want us on stage for sound purposes, so we're not here because we're elevating ourselves, but anyways, it is really, really, really good to be here. Many of you, I'm getting to be an old man now. I'm a grandfather, which is like mind-boggling to me. Most of you still remember me, this little kid that tried to run this place and have fun here, but it is good to come back, and I'm astounded by how many names I'm still remembering. So you guys have left an imprint on me, which is great, and a lot of new faces too, which is exciting. So just a few things very quickly. I'm excited, and again, many of you I've had conversation over the years too, that Fair Havens is now getting a very dedicated board. The privilege of being able to sit under a board for future leadership that is dedicated to the furtherance of God's work through this ministry, and that will be a sole focus of that board, will actually be a real win for this place. So that's very, very exciting for me. So I think that's, Michael, thank you for facilitating that, the AGC, for realizing that that's important and releasing it to basically sit under the accountability of a board. So to me, that's a huge thing. And so again, I thank those that were involved in that. Michael, we started talking quite a while ago already about this, and kind of dreaming a little bit and seeing what God wanted to do. And I'm really, again, it's been said already this morning, this is really about a kingdom vision. It's not about me, us, them, you. It's, I remember when I went to NBC, it was like, I just felt this was the call of God for the kingdom work, not an NBC empire or Fair Havens empire. It was about the kingdom work of God, and I sense the same thing is happening here. Do we know how it's all going to flesh out and where we're going to be in 5-10 years? We don't know that. But I am confident that God is doing a work here, and I'm excited to be and privileged to be a part of that. Ed as well. We were engaged at a different level originally, at a kind of strategic level to really help with, where's the outlook 5-10 years from now, about mission development, vision development, really just understanding the times as well in church movements and what God is doing through church ministry and in His kingdom work. So that'll be part of our job now is to assess kind of the environmental scan is how is God moving in churches? What is a priority? What are the signs of the times? What is the need right now? And how can a ministry and the resources it represents be a part of that kingdom work and walk in obedience to that for the glory of God? And so that'll be kind of our work in terms of seeing what's going on out there. I'm involved in a national survey on faith formation in families right now, and that's going to give us a lot of information too on how families are thriving or struggling with furthering faith in the next generation, and so that'll be an important part of it. The other part of that strategic planning process, together with the board, is to collect and gain input from you. Understanding, as Mike said, respecting and honoring the past, but also really saying, what's the future look like? So we want input from you. That'll be done through town halls, through focus groups, through survey links that we'll send out to you. So
one-on-one conversations as well will be available for that.
That's right. So that'll be very exciting to get into that. That's going to take a little bit more of a line to kind of get moving on that and getting traction on that. The other level of engagement right now is a little bit more operational, and Ed's going to be a bit more involved than I am. He a little bit more discretionary time, and so I'm really glad we kind of roped Ed into this too. I've been doing some consulting with some other camps with Ed, and I just found that we just have a good synergy working together. We complement each other well, and we hold each other accountable in some very key areas where we need to in leadership. And so I'm really glad that Ed, and thankful to God that Ed has agreed to step in, and you will learn to love this man. What he represents, his godliness, his experience, but also his humility.
I noticed that, learn to love. It does take effort.
There you go. Exactly.
It's a careful choice of words.
Intentional. But anyways, and so operationally throughout the summer, you'll see him a little bit more than myself, and again, connect with him. But really, he's here as a coach and to provide some leadership to the existing structure that's here. And we've had a time over the last couple of weeks to really define a bit of a structure. I don't know if you want to talk at all about that.
Absolutely, and part of that is on-the-ground operations requires some specific and very clear leadership, especially as challenges come up that the other staff and you as stakeholders need to know who to go to. And so by God's grace, Benita and Tara are part of the team, and they both have a leadership gifting that is complementary. And that's a beautiful thing when God does that. He delegates and gives gifts, and those two have complementary gifts and are working well together. So I'll be available up to 2 days a week to be on site to help work through questions, issues, to support them in whatever operational kind of questions come up, with an eye to the bigger picture. When I was learning to drive, I remember my driving instructor saying, of course, obviously you're looking out the windshield, but look at the rear view mirror once in a while. And they're included in cars for a reason, because you need to know where you come from as well. And so I think that's true for an organization like this. So, and that's where the benefit of having John as part of the team as well, because he's got some of the history of Fair Havens, and we do want to honor the history, even as we look at the larger picture, which is the windshield. So it is a privilege to be able to do this, and so we want to be available. In fact, we've also created an email address, and if you have questions that are specific to the process or to the board, we will be vetting those and kind of acting as gatekeepers, because we may be able to address some of them, but also it's a way for you to get information. We'll be trying to monitor that as closely as we can. And so on that operational level, we're here to support Tara and Benita as they're providing leadership to the organization. Certainly, Gord has a lot of skill in that area as well, and so that's the role that we're taking. 2 levels. One is at a higher level and a higher altitude in terms of supporting the board, and then also just above the operational level. So
yeah, and that email is questions@fairhavens.org. So if you have any questions, you can just fire off an email, and again, we'll kind of direct it where we can or answer it. And again, the other thing I just want to encourage you to is this is the kingdom work of God, and we hold everything with an open hand, right? And we just pray for God's wisdom and leadership. The board will need your prayer support. This is spiritual battle going on, and the enemy would rather see this place empty. And as Ed said, and Michael said, it's so beautiful driving in yesterday. I think you were doing a big tennis tournament or whatever over there. There was just like thousands of kids on the tennis courts, all practicing COVID protocols, of course. But it was just to see the vibrancy of families, your grandkids, your children, connecting with God here, and then coming back, right? Like sometimes this is their place of grounding. I was sharing that with Malcolm. Your children will be impacted by this place, and you may not notice that for years. And just a little story, I had a gentleman come and connect with me yesterday at NBC, who grew up at NBC, committed his life to Christ when he was 14 years old or 13 years old at NBC, had really wandered off, and Wednesday just hit the wall, got in his car and came up to NBC and said, I knew I had to be here, I ended up here because this is my grounding. And so I prayed with him, we connected, we're connecting every day now to kind of see how things are going, connecting him with a counselor, but you don't know the rootedness that this place can have, and many of you do know. But we're honored to hold that with an open hand and honor God with the stewardship of that. So thank you, Michael, for your leadership and the privilege to be a part of it.
That's great. Welcome. Just give me 1 minute before you pop up here. Ladies and gentlemen, I do want to introduce you to and just say hello to John and Jenny Hulting. John and Jenny, if you could just take off your, and stand up, those silly masks, but I guess we have to do it. But I'm so delighted that you're here. And we were just earlier on today, I was describing just how God in His providential care really brought an idea, John, that you've been living with for probably even 10 years. And in His providence brought Fair Havens together. Remember that meeting? Actually, Wim is just in front of you. You might remember those early meetings with the AGC, wondering whether this is what God had in store. And it did. And so stay after. There's going to be a reception. We're going to kind of like say all kinds of great things about Gord, who's been here for 50 years, but many people will want to meet you and just say hello and those kind of things. So, without further ado, Malcolm Wildeboer. I want to give you 3 reasons why we were so excited about Malcolm coming on board as the architect, the chosen architect, to assist us in developing a master plan for all of Fair Havens. And really there's 3 reasons why the board of directors made this choice. Number 1, Malcolm is an architect deeply committed to the gospel and understands, actually intuitively deeply understands, both the story and the mission of Fair Havens. That's not an easy task to find out in the architectural world, just right from the start. Number 2, he's a creative and yet practical professional who has experience in properties like Fair Havens across this province. And then number 3, this is what I love best. I'm only going to say it once, Malcolm, and then I'm going to deny I said it once we get out of here. This is a man who, he actually does have a listening posture. There's a curiosity about Malcolm, and when he talks to you, he actually wants to hear what you say. And I have seen it many times. I've worked with Malcolm on other projects. What you say will somehow stream and seep into his thinking. And that's the kind of architect that we needed here at Fair Havens, that had the ability to allow history, allow the story of Fair Havens to seep into his own thinking and design and suggestions for what a plan should look like. So without further ado, Malcolm, the floor is yours. Go ahead.
Thank you, Michael. Yeah, so I'm Malcolm Wildeboer, and I'm an architect, as Michael introduced me. Michael, I started feeling a little competitive when you introduced yourself as the son of a Dutch immigrant family, and I'm the eldest son of a Dutch immigrant family, a family of 10 children, and it was like camp every day around the dinner table, and you know, I've definitely had opportunities, as Michael said, to be involved with camps, and something that's very dear to my heart. About 20 years ago, I was invited to help Camp Fire. That's Camp Fire with an exclamation mark. You can Google that. So it's a youth camp. It's different than this grand sort of family camp, but you know, I think it has aspirations of moving in maybe that direction as well. But I was able to assist them in designing a camp for youth, and largely it was a mission to inner city Hamilton youth, and it's grown. The church communities that I'm part of is very much a part of that organization. So that was that was my first taste at working with a camp, and my career is about 27 years old. In fact, yesterday my wife and I celebrated our 27th wedding anniversary. Very blessed with 6 children, and not to be competitive here, John, but I also have 2 grandsons. So quite recently. So yeah, so I have a passion for what you're doing here, and I'm learning lots, and I am a listening ear. You know, I had an opportunity fairly early in my career to assist the Metropolitan Bible Church in Ottawa design their new building, which many of you may know. So my partner and I, Ralph Vandenberg, we did a lot of listening. There was many groups. It's like a huge camp in a way, and you know, meeting with all the various groups, and they compiled for us I'm going to say 500-600 page document from all the stakeholders within the church. They worked on that for probably a year and a half, just talking about their programs and what their functional needs were. And then I was glad I didn't have to listen to all that I could actually read it and absorb it. And today they have a successful ministry at the Metropolitan Bible Church in Ottawa. Ed, I was really happy that you brought in the Apostle Paul into the conversation this morning. And I just wanted to let you all know that 1,961 years ago, the Apostle Paul laid his eyes on Fair Havens. So this is not my screensaver, but so this is Fair Havens. It's in the Lee of Crete, and the Apostle Paul, as you all know the story, you can read all about it in Acts 27, was on his way with to Rome to meet the man who thought he was the ruler of the world, Emperor Nero, and they hit rough seas. They took. They came into Fair Havens for a day or two. Paul really wanted to stay. He thought this was going to be a safe place. But Julius, the centurion, who was friendly to Paul, said, no, we're going to keep going. And as you know, the Lord had a different plan. Paul was shipwrecked shortly thereafter, about 2 weeks after that. But the Lord still had him on mission to Rome. And he gave his life there for the gospel. But the reason why I'm talking about this is in conversations with John Halting, he said he too got into it with me very early on, saying that there's an amazing history to this name, the choice of the name Fair Havens. And he reminded me, of course I was well aware of the story, but I thought, that is an amazing connection. So we're going to flip the slide here. And just a little over 80 years ago, a man, Herbert Irwin, who Liz, I should tell you, was 70 years old when he laid his eyes on these 5 bays that are today Fair Havens. And from my research, and many of you know this much more than I do, but Herbert Irwin, an attorney and a pastor in Toronto, working with the AGC, discovered this 167 acres. And I think originally for a little while they called it 5 Bays, the 5 Bays Conference, but pretty soon after that, it's been known now for 80 years as Fair Havens. So when I was invited as an architect to take a look at this project, someone called and said, we have this camp, Fair Havens. Of course, the first thing I do is go to Google Earth. If we can see the next slide. And here we have this tremendous piece of property, 167 acres. I've sort of highlighted it just to see the boundaries in red. And this is the early stages of trying to understand. When you're asked to think about a master plan, there's a lot of understanding and measuring and trying to figure out what is it. And there's obviously a whole human side to it and the historic side to it. But for me as an architect, there's very much a physical side. So I'm very relieved as well, Michael, that you're bringing on guys like Ed and John to sort of help us with the visioning, because thankfully I understand the spiritual vision here, but I need the help of many people, all the stakeholders, the program people, and the leadership here to help me understand what it is that will make this a long-term successful camp. I thought so another really neat thing that I was apprised of early on, I think it was Michael that organized this, we had someone do drone footage. And Brian, I'm just wondering, guys, if we could maybe show, I was kind of blown away by these, and I think you will be as well, that we can see this Fair Havens from the sky. It really needs music with it, but this is just one more. One more from the other direction, from the block. So, I have about, a dozen of these videos, so it's very helpful being up in Ottawa and being able to just, we've actually taken a lot of screenshots from it to understand the various buildings. But I think something that was, I've been here, I think, 3 times now, and this is sort of the first time that I've seen the camp in full action, well, almost full action. And it was a real privilege to stay here last night as well. And then I had a really neat opportunity to spend time with John Friesen, who, as you all know, was the previous director here. And John knows this place intimately. He walks around like a warden with a key and got me into anything I want to see last evening. One funny little anecdote, I don't know, but I was marveling that John is one of these guys that everybody knows from a mile away. And I was walking with him and people were waving, yelling, "Hi, John!" And it's all because of his hat. So John told me, he says, I actually sneak in here. I actually sneak in here once in a while with a ball cap. Nobody knows me. But for me, I was really appreciative of the time that John took. It was a beautiful evening, sunset, like everything about this place kind of really resonated with me last night, just seeing the accessibility. This is, I think to use John's words, it's very pastoral. It's different in that sense. Like it's not a rugged northern camp. It's very pastoral. There's lots of big mature trees. Very accessible. People of all ages can get around. I think it's called a golf cart culture here that I need to be aware of, and I think it's pretty neat. But there's just so many amenities, and there's so many things about it that I just absolutely love. And so last night, was probably a very pivotal experience for me to help me understand sort of where we're going. So as I mentioned, a lot about trying to understand or start to think about a master plan. And really, you need to understand that we're thinking about a master plan. We're trying to assemble this concept, and it's got to be more collaborative still. But we need to get things on the ground, and as an architect, I need to measure and understand what it is we're working with. So we'll go to the next slide. One of our first gestures here was to take a look at this map of the property, and then start to think about it in zones. And we came up with 7, what we believe, sort of distinctive zones that it's sort of a way for us to parse the project. I consider these like puzzle pieces. It's hard maybe to see the different colors. Each of the zone we associate with a different color and number, and we can then take the individual puzzle piece and start to look and focus on that. It starts to give us, instead of being overwhelmed by 167 acres of camp, how do we think about some of the key areas? So for instance, site number 1 is Air Havens, we're calling it Air Havens Commons. Now we're using some terminology here that may or may not be the terminology for the future, but it was just, again, to help us as designers think about the project. So we have the Fair Havens Commons, site number 1, which is really, it's the admission, the admin center, the worship, and the food services. That's kind of the heart of the camp. Zone 2 is to the right. That's the Seasons Hiders campsite, and as you can see, there's a lot of forest there, a lot of land that can be considered. Zone 3, that's right in the very heart of the camp, and that's the maintenance zone. And that's where a lot of attention needs to be. We're going to see later in this presentation that we started to focus also on Zone 3. And Zone 4 is Fair Glen. And I guess from my own personal experience, Fair Glen is probably the most similar to what I worked on or have been working on at the Campfire Bible Camp, where it's primarily a youth camp. I really enjoyed the time I spent there, and here at Fair Glen, and met with Heather briefly after the meeting yesterday. We just got a deeper understanding of what that camp is about. And Zone 5 is above the highway. We're calling it the waterfront lands. That's the golf course, and again, that's a placeholder that we just labeled as one of the puzzle pieces. And then Zone 6 is across the highway, and it's a beautiful forested area, which I think also has lots of potential. So we're really trying to study and understand the potential. And then the next step we did, and I think I go to the next slide. So here, and this was also for the board, and this is for John and Jenny, like for everybody, all the stakeholders that maybe are just somewhat new to this whole organization. We've provided these slides with highlights, with images of what's happening in each of those zones, just as a placeholder to understand what's currently happening in the zones. So it's a nice readable document. The next slide. Right, so this puzzle piece is Zone 1, and that's the commons. And again, it's highlighting all the various things that are going on in this space, and the various buildings, Bill Crump, Riverside, Heritage Chapel, and I love the sugar bush. My parents have a sugar bush, and want to make sure that picture got in there. So these, and again, these are buildings and features that are existing and functional. So we want to make sure that we understand them, how they're working, and how they might fit into the long-term master plan. Like we're not here to try to take things down. We're here to try to figure out what works, but also make decisions that we believe will help you for the next 80 years. And that may mean something may have to move or be taken down. And I put this up, and I hope John Friesen is not too sensitive about me raising this point, but I'm kind of fresh eyes on this beautiful camp. And I thought, as I came out of the riverside, I was looking out at the canal and at the locks and the water, but right in front of me are two big water tanks on probably the most beautiful promontory of Fairhaven's camp. There's a great tree there, and there's two big water tanks. And I understand how that all evolves and why they're there, but it was just fresh eyes saying, why are there water tanks right in this amazing piece of property that has a great view up and down. And the other thing that I think you guys have an amazing, maybe I didn't even mention this, Zone 7, is the waterfront. We actually decided to call it Zone 7 as something that needs to be considered as an important asset to the camp. And what sort of things can we do to this zone to help, celebrate it, but also as a face to the community. I realize that the Trent Severn, the voting population seems to be diminishing. I know there's real interest within the Trent Severn organization that they want more voters. But it is a face of the camp that I think is kind of underwhelming right now. And so even just for people to see and go by and say, Fairhaven, what is that? What's going on there? I think that's an important thing to be thinking about. And even just to try to do more things with that beautiful amenity that you have, the waterfront. So, and I think the fact that the locks to me seem very inaccessible. I know you don't own them, but they're right here. And I think as a tourist, as a camper, I would love to just be able to sort of naturally find my way over to the locks and enjoy that feature, watch boats going up and down. And I just find that at this point that maybe hasn't been fully addressed, and it's something that we might be able to help you with. We'll jump on the next slide. Again, going back to my point about measuring and understanding what it is, we had a professional surveying company, local, Aurelia, very accurate digital topographical survey of the property. This is a very useful tool for us as architects, but also the other consultants that we will need to bring on board in time to help us get this right. And just wanted to touch briefly on a couple of those consultants. And we haven't lined them up yet, but we're looking for them. And again, Gord's been a great helper. Just sort of mentioning the people that have helped in the project in the past. But there's big scale infrastructure things like electrical, that we have sufficient electrical for the camp presently, but also for future visioning. The whole septic sewage system, and we've got, it's quite a complex system, and I think there's one person in this room that understands it perfectly, and that's Gord. But we now have it documented, or we have it documented in the survey, but we need to get some civil consulting to help us figure out what it is that we have, what we can and can't do. And also, to interface with the province and the health departments. We need that professional to help us move that along and see what doors we can open in terms of future development. So this here is just an image to show you that this is a project that we can check the box. Yes, we have a legal document here, a topographical survey that will help us with that. Next slide. Right, so this is probably somewhat redundant, just showing you again the various zones. So another again, I want to tell you that we're just getting into this. Really, we're trying to understand the project. We have ideas that we're trying to test. It's going to come down to more conversations with the community. We're also very interested in trying to get something starting to happen. Like we've got the new board, and we've got support that we want to start showing some action as well, and doing things. Let's try to figure out, this is the board's direction to me, is let's try to figure out things that we can do now already that could help improve the current situation and that wouldn't be detrimental to the larger vision. So we have, we've got good documentation of the key buildings that are here. I mean, we're standing in the Irwin Chapel. We've got the Bill Crump Center, the Heritage Chapel. These are great buildings that we want to figure out how we can make them better and more useful. We want to make sure that things like comfort stations are functioning well. We need another comfort station. We want to pay attention to the whole maintenance area. So there are definitely things that we can start to approach and attack. Maybe attack's too strong a word, but try to help advance these things, and we'd be cognizant of what that means for the future. And I think it'd just be a great way for us to step in and start to help the camp with some new vision. So let's go to the next slide. Well, yeah, sorry. I just want to say as well, we've been modeling. We've taken this. The neat thing with today's technology, the topographical, and we can actually model. So the camp, we're actually taking the buildings that we know and are trying to work with in the master plan. We're modeling them in 3D so we can fly through and help visualize that. The next slide. So here is a big change. We've taken the Bill Crump Center, and we are all quite aware of its the rusting. A lot of money was spent on the wraparound the deck with all the steel structure. I think it's great, but it's rusting. It's very difficult to maintain from a painting perspective. And we also felt that today it would be great to start to think about this building. There's nothing wrong with the building. It's a solid, well-built structure. But let's help make this feel more like a camp, a lodge. So we're looking at proposing kind of a facelift with a new roof line. We're actually keeping the existing roof, but proposing a roof built on top that would extend out over top of the wraparound porch. So you can see all the structure is still in place, but we've platted. What's a little bit deceiving here is that we know that or I know, and probably even spent my time last night, that this walkway goes past, and there's a whole landscaping thing that we want to think about. And, you know, in the meantime, it's still I think it's still a great use as a camp office. And we have the second story suites that are, you know, there's nothing wrong with them. We just thought, this is kind of a presentation building where as you approach the camp, this could use some flair, and this is this is one of the first pieces of the puzzle. We thought, you know, we can, while we're thinking about the overall master planning, we can think about how this building could be, how we could help this building in terms of the whole language that we're developing for the camp. So we can just slip to the next. We get a few more images of the proposed lodge detailing, but it's more woodsy. And you know, a bit more developed roof line, but really it's a skin over top of the existing split face concrete that gives us this sort of new language. And we'll have the next slide. So here's another beautiful building. Again, the Heritage Chapel has great bones. It's something that we, I mean, I was quite taken by. I love the blue lamp structure inside, and I think, again, last night I was understanding a little bit more of how it's used in the summertime with the kids' camps. But also, we also recognize this as a really kind of unique winter retreat facility that could house a smaller conference, a smaller group of people. And we like to design this, or help design this, so that it becomes maybe a little more useful in terms of having, you know, some washrooms, proper washrooms with breakout classrooms, and additional entry. But we also thought that in the summertime, it would be nice to be able to have the option to open up the doors, so you could have an event, even like what we're doing right now, where people are outside participating, that this feels more like a pavilion within the camp. And, you know, we've looked long and hard and walked through and seen the pictures of the old heritage home, but it certainly, from my perspective, and maybe some of these are some of the harder decisions, but I think it's a bit of a liability to the camp. It's going to be a very, very expensive thing to try to, you know, rework, spend the money on that old building. And I say this because it's uneasy, because I grew up fixing up a 120-year-old Victorian home, not unlike this, with my family. I think that's how my father and mother kept the 10 of us out of trouble. They bought this old house and had us restore it. So, but I know what's involved, and I think our recommendation is going to be to actually take this chapel and remove the old house and build it as more of a small conference center. And obviously we have to think of, in our master planning, where do we send people that are currently using or sleeping in the upstairs of the Heritage House. A point was raised yesterday, is there a way to sort of try to keep some of that, the heritage element of it? And absolutely, and we'll think about that as we develop the addition and what we can save from that. I was saying yesterday that I designed a church in Ottawa that we had to take down an old stone church to make the bigger church to help them with their new, it was a growing congregation, and that was painful, but we were able to keep a memory of that old church within the new, and I think that's some of the thinking that's going to go into developing this. But yeah, so this is another building that we think is well situated and something that we can work with and want to work with. So this is again an early proposal of what we think could happen to the Heritage Chapel in Zone 1. So again, sort of fresh eyes on the Zone 3, which is the maintenance zone. I visited here, I drove through here in a golf cart, and I just realized, it was almost, for me, again, no background, I could see how it evolved to where it is, but it was kind of dizzying how there's traffic going everywhere, and there's kids running and biking, and it didn't feel safe to me, and I thought, we need to focus on this Zone 3. I mean, it feels like it's well situated in terms of its proximity I believe now, like I was uncertain even if its proximity to how the camp functioned, if it was right, because we all know the provincial park model where you come in and you go down a sort of bush road to find the maintenance center that's quite remote from the daily activity. But, and I got that sense, you know, there's so many things trying to happen here. There's recycling, there's garbage, there's you know, a dumping station for the trailers, there's people going in and out of the maintenance shed, there's gas tanks, there's this Quonset, the washrooms that are, there's just, I don't think it's rocket science here to tell you that this needs to have some new thinking and some attention, even just for the general safety of you know, kids biking around. So we started to look at this zone, and we'll look at the next slide. Right, so this basically speaks to the current scenario, where you see the Quonsets kind of, I realize you can't read that from a distance, but the top of the page is the Quonset. We see the new maintenance, relatively new maintenance building, and there's a scattering of cabins and chalets. And you know, I understood last night with walking with John that there actually used to be, the road used to continue in front of the chalet. I think we're all familiar with what I'm speaking about, the chalet that gets continued off to that, towards that intersection of the main entry. And during his tenure here, that was actually removed. And now the chalet is, you know, there's less dust and traffic, people driving in front of the chalet. So it's that same kind of thinking that we're trying to apply to this zone. So I'm going to jump to the next slide. You know, these are ideas that we haven't fully tested, but we like to, still within that same puzzle piece, we've started to rethink how, and with the maintenance garage being sort of central and working with that, is there a way to properly fence it, shield it with more planting, more trees, and ideally, and we all know that there's implications, and John is working with MTO, but ideally even a second entrance to allow truck traffic and maintenance traffic back into that zone off the highway would be fantastic. And then the other point is that I spent some time camping this summer already, and I spent some time this was at Fitzroy Provincial Park in Ottawa, and I was one of these weird guys who was standing around the dumping station taking pictures of how the dumping station worked. I actually started measuring it, and then somebody came and dumped stuff, and I just got out of there. But you know, it was just helpful for me to understand how, you know, very simple, how the flow of traffic, the fresh water supply, the separation of the fresh water, the safe water from the dumping station, you know, these sort of things. We just want to bring it up a level in terms of functionality, and you know, allow the overnight folks to have a safe and clean way to circulate. And we're also proposing, and again, it's a placeholder, but we're proposing, first of all, the demo of the Quonset, and then creating this island that's quite sheltered and wooded. We'll plant trees around it, but that would be a more central comfort station location. And again, you can think of it more like the provincial park type comfort station. I was out measuring a comfort station as well while at the same camp. 5 o'clock in the morning, so no one was watching me measure the. But I just it's probably a good thing in my library to understand how the provincial parks approach these things, and I think that's the sort of mindset that I have in terms of just a very clean, simple amenity, which would also probably include some laundry. And I was meeting with Val this morning because I just went to see her at the laundry, and that's quite the machine that's going on there. That's something that I think long term needs to be well worked out and positioned properly. It's probably in the right zone, but I think that we're showing it removed from this model, because we feel that we can. The chalet is quite a nice asset to the camp, and creating even a new, maybe another couple of chalets in that zone with a wooded separation between that and the maintenance, but that you could have a number of church families, a group, come into that turning circle just to the left of the maintenance area, and have a couple more chalets in the wood in the woods would be a neat way to do that, but then try to separate the laundry sort of facility from, you know, the campers, those that are enjoying quiet time at in the chalets. And, you know, this was just another gesture, and it's, we're just putting it out there as those two cottages that are tucked into, we're back to zone 1, but, you know, if there's a way to try to create an enclave there, again, so that it's not just for one family, but a group of families could potentially rent those and have a bit of a retreat zone within a wooded area around where you already know where those other cottages are. We'll flip to the next slide here is, again, this is sort of a before and after visual of where our minds are at with the maintenance center. And I just want we have a wide through road for dumping and fresh water. I mean, I don't pretend to fully understand how this is all going to work, but conceptually, I think we need to help move that along. And also, just again, yesterday talking with Gord and some of his team, you know, it'd be nice to be able to circulate around the immediate or the maintenance building. As you know, there's a back overhead door. I took a walk there this morning, and I think there's a way to even reroute the main road behind the maintenance building a little bit to give us more room to make that function properly. But as you can see, there's lots of things being thought about, and we're still gathering information. But I want to leave off with one more thing. Can I do that, Michael? So I've had this wonderful opportunity over the last half year to get to know Gord Fox. And Gord has been a tremendous supporter of providing information. And one of my first emails from Gord, I actually asked him for some photos or a drawing or something, and he texted me or emailed me and said, well, you know, I'm not really too comfortable doing this, and I don't know that I actually got anything from him at that point, and so he tried again. But now, Gord is very proficient, exponential growth in his use of technology. He's sending me drawings, he's sending me photos and measurements. It's been an absolute pleasure, Gord, working with you. And I was asked to provide a slide here, and we're going to show this in a minute, but it's a way for this community to honor you in your incredible 50-year contribution to maintaining this camp. So let's see the next slide, folks. And Michael, did you say you were giving him the truck?
Gord, on behalf of the board of directors, this is a complete delight. And I look at you right now and I go, wow, this is how much I know about Gord, and I only have known him for maybe a year. When I look around the room here, I can only imagine the stories that 50 years has delivered this institution. And when we're going to have a reception after and just celebrate Gord, and I challenge you to, when you grab one of those pieces of cake or those cupcakes, yeah, think of a story. And it'd be interesting who's got the story from like 50 years ago. Gord, I know you have the stories from 50 years ago, like all of them. So if you need any help, just go, Gord, please help me out on that story 50 years ago. But it's amazing for me to see, it's amazing for all to see, just the durability of your commitment. What it took for you to rise up in the morning and go, Lord, my path is here, my job is here, my vocation is here. That's sometimes easier to do with big and the great things. It's a lot more difficult to do with the small things and the details and the hard work. In some ways, I do kind of superimpose my Dutch immigrant. You kind of are like, the old Dutch immigrant guy who can work like crazy, but you're way more than that. Because I've heard you pray. I've heard you talk about the gospel in our meetings. And to be able to have that powerful ability to just get real worked up, like say, okay, let's actually get with a shovel and do stuff here, and still be able to sit with someone and share the word with them and pray with them, those kind of things. That is a joyous combination of gifts, which you have done all these 50 years. And may you continue to do it here and bless Fair Havens with that. So, ladies and gentlemen, the Gord Fox Maintenance Center. Wow, that was exciting. You know what? We're going to move into just a short period of question and answers, or conversations related. Maybe less answers than we can tackle, and more questions than we can tackle as well. So I want to just kind of put it out to the audience. Don't think we need to solve this all right now. Ed is going to be around. Malcolm is going to be around. John and Jenny are staying for a period of time. And but let's start off right now, and I'd love to get some of your thoughts and some of your questions. And it could be on some of the work that Malcolm is doing. It could be on some of the more organizational governance issues and how we're trying to transition, those kind of things. So the floor is open. The floor is open. Yes, I love that. Like right up like that. Yes.
Thanks, John. Okay, yeah, I was wondering about Fair Glen. Fair Glen is where we house our students. We normally hire over 100 students, and the facilities are really bad. Are we going to do anything to improve those facilities?
We would love to. Yeah, so what we are doing, what you saw today, was really two things. Number one is kind of the basic framework. How can we look at the overall property and kind of so that it can be kind of mentally captured? And then number two, what we challenged Malcolm to do is say, Malcolm, for now, just to get us started, let's deliver on some key factors that will improve and raise the level. So there's many things beyond what Malcolm has envisioned. Like Riverside, Fair Glen, like even like a couple of the cabins they're just going to need to be replaced in Fair Glen. What are the possibilities across, like in the 100 acres across the road? We were kind of dreaming about redoing a farmstead that has a evangelistic kind of focus to it. There's so many things, but that doesn't matter, because what we want to know is what you're thinking. So I'm just so eager to see you talking with Malcolm with those 10 questions, because I suspect behind those 10 questions is going to be a whole bunch of ideas as well. So yes, we're just getting started. Lord willing, right now we have the resources, the gift of $3 million. We're going to need a lot more than that over time. I suspect we're going to need 2 to 3 times that amount for the overall plan. That doesn't scare me one bit. This is a huge. The potential of Fair Havens, as you all know, from its 80 years, is just huge. So we can do this, but it's going to have to take some time to be able to do that. And what are the basics that need to happen first? And there's a bunch of them. But the answer to your question is yes. 9 more we can chat about later on as well. Go ahead further.
Ask the question and I'll repeat it. So this question is mainly about the daily operations. I'm part of the maintenance crew here as a volunteer, and in the past we've had duty managers and stuff like that. My concern right now is at the moment we really don't have anybody after 5 o'clock to kind of go to at the camp in case something might, I know we have an emergency number that you can call, but we don't really have people on board here. And I'm wondering how we might be able to come up with something that would facilitate visitors who are here who have a problem. Where can they go to?
Yeah, Mike, if I could answer that. Ed and I were actually talking about that very thing this morning. I stayed overnight last night, and there was a few situations that I'm going, where's the duty manager, right? And this morning at 7 a.m. there was a fire alarm that went off in Livingston, and I'm going, who do they call, right? So, good, you're Bob? No.
Brad.
Brad, okay, Brad. we will chat more about that yet. So there are some solutions that are pretty simple, but they're very meaningful and they'll be effective. So.
Yeah, and I bet you there's going to be like 20 of those coming up over time, which is great. Yeah, John, we have one right here that I had missed earlier on. Yeah, sorry about that.
Are we going to have a fundraiser for this? Because we've done this in the past.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I can't wait to start that. So as Malcolm starts working a little bit further along in the master plan, that we have a few more ideas cemented, then at that point in time, we're going to kick into gear a fundraising strategy and plan to basically invite everyone in. Obviously, people can do that now. I'd love to hear from you. And that way we can leverage our gift. I would love to be able to model and leverage the gift that we have already received from the Haltings into the future. So, yes, let's get a bit more work done on our master plan, get a bit more input and consultation from everyone. Then we'll get to that point where we can actually get just a solid fundraising campaign. As you said, we've done it before. I love it. We can do it again. Absolutely. Right.
Question about how are we addressing the growing hydro, sewer, and water needs as we do all these wonderful things? The systems are pretty taxed right now, so how are we looking at that?
Perfect question. So and we are struggling with that on a timing issue as well. So in the early stages, what we've done, so remember, what's the overall framework, what's sort of the zones, that kind of stuff, what can we do on an immediate basis? And Malcolm gave you some picture, but we've already, the board of directors has already approved Malcolm going ahead and retaining the necessary consultants on the electrical, hydroelectrical, on the sewage, and on technology, because technology, the whole technological structure. That's very funny and very sad at the same time, isn't it? Yeah. Like, so you're 100% right. Not only do we have to do design and think buildings, we've got to think basic infrastructure. And you know what? It's at this point in time, we just have to hire. It's increasingly more difficult to get approvals, to get all your certifications, all those kind of things. So let's do it right from the beginning. Let's get the consultants in. That way we know what the plan is into the future. That way we know whether we can scale growth. That way we know timing issues. And we also know what it is going back to fundraising. I suspect the hydro, that the electrical and hydro is not an inexpensive effort here. Let's just put it that way. Did I say that subtly, or? It's called a big honking bill, ladies and gentlemen. But we'll tackle it. Let's get it right from the start. Not only what we need now, but what we need into the future, including whatever potential opportunities we have on the waterfront, the waterfront lands. Did anyone catch what Malcolm called the zone? What zone is it? Where the waterfront lands are? No, not 7. That's the water. 6. Did anyone catch what Malcolm called it? I think he called it plain ease. Does anyone know plain ease? Pilgrim's Progress. I'll just leave it at that. Just go check out Pilgrim's Progress and you'll know what Malcolm was up to. Okay, further questions?
Right here.
Yeah, I got it. Okay, go ahead, John.
Hi, something that's very near to my heart is our kitchens and our dining rooms. I work over at Fairglen, and I know I've been told for years that our dishwasher is at least 50 years old. And we come in every day expecting it to be sitting down here on the ground. And I haven't heard anything. And let's face it, like, we eat. So we need to update our kitchens.
I like that. 100%. And I think kind of fundamentally we're going to have to look even at a little bit of a bigger picture on that. The Riverside, the way the Riverside building is placed, I think Malcolm is going to have to think about the future design of that whole building. So for example, even one of the reasons why the Heritage House needs to be removed is that we have a little bit more room there to look at what the possibilities of growth are on that waterfront there. And yeah, which would obviously deal immediately with the direct question that you have posed. So there is no two ways about it. Our basic food service infrastructure and how that is going to service our existing needs and potential future needs is going to be factored in. Matter of fact, I overheard a conversation between John and Malcolm on this very front in terms of what that potential building might look like into the future. So on track. I appreciate it. If you do have any ideas on nuance, because sometimes the people who are on the practical front line have more of an intuitive sense of what a design might look like. One thing, no disrespect, Malcolm, but it's one thing for an architect to go, this is what I kind of want. It's another thing for the person who actually does the work to be able to live into that design. So please feel free to connect on that.
Thank you. One other element on that is there's going to be this, and it's a needed tension, future looking and the immediate now, right? And so there'll be decisions made for the immediate now to kind of, and sometimes there'll be, you know what, right now this is what we can do because there's a bigger plan. And so there's going to have to be a lot of kind of grace and patience and understanding as we kind of work in parallel to the future, but also addressing the current priorities and kind of some of the emergency situations like a dishwasher or washing machines or whatever. But
John, you're right on. And let me illustrate. Like we were having conversations about the chapel. And so the idea was, is what can we do now that will actually align with the master plan and not undermine future aspects of the master plan, that you're wasting money, that you're being discouraging, and so the challenge was, and that's exactly what we have with the chapel. That chapel is going to endure. It's a gorgeous building already, and it is going to endure long into the master plan. So you're not in contrast, you're actually in alignment, but still allowing us to get stuff done.
I just wonder if there needed to be consideration for a zone, say, for dump station, recycling, and waste to get all that traffic sort of off to one side.
Thank you for that. And, yeah, and I know Malcolm is already thinking about that in that area. So what you got was a basic concept. On the more practical basis, though, you know, Malcolm will figure out how to design that property that is efficient. But again, if you've got ideas on there, Malcolm's not the one who's living every day utilizing these services. You are the ones, and he needs to hear from you. And remind me of the email again, John.
questions@fairhavens.org.
That's right. I cannot stress how important that is. This is not just a mechanism to say, you know, that people are being heard. It actually is a mechanism to say, how do you and how can you actually influence the design of what the future will look like. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm just wondering about you talking about the master plan in terms of scheduling, like you talk about immediate and future needs. Do you have a sense of what timing you're looking at?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's a tough question to answer honestly and directly for a number of reasons. Ideally, we'd love to be able to go, okay, Malcolm, get building drawings for the chapel and let's get working on that. So what are the things that we can start right away? But even on that front, and you know what, our plan is to move ahead on that as best we can. But even now, in terms of looking at accessing construction managers, construction companies, the impact and the difficulty with supply chains and all that kind of stuff, we're going to have to be sensitive to that dynamic as well. Malcolm and I were just having that conversation. There's no doubt that's going to affect the pace of this. And then you want to be careful as well. I'm not exactly sure how we can ramp up a completion of the master plan. We're obviously talking 2022, but we are not going to undermine the necessary consultations and time and research for a full master plan to be able to just get that stuff right away. But we will, and we'll, as we kind of make decisions in that, disclose to you as soon as we can, like, okay, we have decided to kick into gear on the chapel, we have decided to kick into gear on the column. And so there's a lot of thought on that. We have decided to kick into gear the maintenance center. Some of that stuff is just you have to do it into the future for we plan properly. So a little bit tough on the timing side. Let's be honest, we haven't built a master plan for Fair Havens for a long period of time now, and I don't want to kind of narrow that into a box too tightly. But, man, would I love to go, Malcolm, if you have building drawings in the fall, because I'd love to get started at that. And we'll see whether we can find the construction infrastructure to be able to do that at this time. Sorry that I can't be more clear. I would love to be more clear on that.
One more here. I don't know how many questions you want to do, but
Yeah,
I think we need
just
to...
a couple more. That cake is getting attractive.
Hi, I'm a seasoned cider. I, drain my sewage tank, not knowing where it's going, but trusting that it's going where it's supposed to go. And could you give us more details as far as what would be involved if to paramedic Gord knows the system, but if he's the only one, what would be involved in the assessment of the whole septic system that we have in this camp?
So, thanks for that question, and it's a really good question. And at some point, it actually is going to need the technical expertise of a sewage consultant to be able to help us on that. So, a couple things. Number one, I think everyone knows, and I know, I'm an old school construction guy, and it's amazing what Gord and his team has done in order to be able to build the existing infrastructure. And we are in incredible shape from an existing infrastructure point of view. But to create efficiencies, to create better use spaces, that kind of thing. The most I can answer is we're just going to have to hire the right players. And right now, the advantage we have is the technology on waste management is so improved over the last 20 years that our flexibility for more micro solutions than we've ever seen before ever is really beneficial to the camp world. So let me leave it at that. I don't want to speak beyond my own expertise, but we are taking this really, really seriously. If we don't, the potential for growth and even the potential for long-term is very weak, and we just have to. It's not a question. We will do it.
Two more over here. We talked about technology, and we all chuckled and laughed. But I think that when we talk about bringing our families, our children, our grandchildren, inviting friends here, we're asking them to step back in terms of technology to the 1970s. And I think that technology is one area that can move ahead quickly in building a positive rapport, and really building back from the destruction that COVID has caused to this facility as a business, to the relationships, to building back retreat centers, to doing the things like that, to, you can see that we have to have ministry outside, properly doing those things. Those are things that can be done rapidly and quickly to start to build back the environment. And we haven't talked much about that part of the operation, which is the people ministry side. I think it's a simple one to make big strides forward and to work with people like Val on the outside. We know there's obstacles there, but they're not very, they're instrumental with a little bit of money to bring this and make a positive image for the people coming through the door every week here at camp.
I love it. Yeah, go ahead, Ed.
I'd love to jump into that comment tied to the question that was asked earlier about fundraising. There's an opportunity to invest in the kingdom work of Fairhaven's ministry even now. You know the difficulty of the COVID season that we've just come through, and there's no doubt that it has affected Fairhaven's on a deep level. That there is a risk, there's always a tension that comes along with master plans and buildings and capital projects like this, that people will forget the operational side of the ministry, programming side of it. So thank you so much for asking that question. And I would really encourage you, I'm a Mennonite background, so I'll talk dollars and cents, let your wallets do the talking. Invest in it. It's not a donation, it's an investment in the kingdom being advanced through Fairhaven's ministry. That's what this is about, and it's a great opportunity, and I know that God will bless you for it in more ways than you can even imagine. So that's an encouragement and a challenge both built in, but that's an excellent
Yeah, I love the question, tying technology to actual ministry. And Malcolm, I know you're hearing this message as well. Just maybe one more question, John, is that, I think we're...
Hello, thank you for all of this amazing visioning work that has been done by the board already. It's inspiring to see all these dreams for the future in pictures. I had a quick question about governance. I wanted to ask if there are currently any women, young people, or seasoned siders on the board of directors, or if you have plans for that in the near future.
So great question. Great question for that. Just let me give you a little bit of the sense of the structure. So the answer to your question is presently no. There's a reason for this. It's a transition board, and we will need to be thinking as we move into the future about what a reoriented board of directors will look like, including who's represented, what the diversity of the Fairhavens looks like on the board, all of those kind of things. So initially, the Fairhavens was owned and operated by AGC as a church and actually run under the authority of the board of directors of the denomination itself. One of the fundamental pieces was, and I think John, you hit it right on in your earlier comments is it was critical to actually have a dedicated board of directors to the camp itself. If you look at the dollar comparisons between AGC and the camp, they were very different dollar comparisons. And that is essentially what we've accomplished to date. And there's a 5-person board board structure. That structure is there in order to be able to make the transition into what a new Fair Havens will look like. So don't see what we have right now as cemented forever, never, never, never. It's not going to be. And that's also, secondly, why we are working with Eduardo and with John to help us. Well, what does that look like? What does governance look like into the future? What does proper representation look like into the future? What are the policies that we are going to live with? So historically, we've lived largely under a policy framework of a denomination. That wasn't always applicable to what we have here at the camp. So I do hear you on that. Right now, we are in that transition period. We need to be looking future what that kind of representation will look like and how that shows, how Fair Havens, as it were, shows up in the board of directors. If I can capture it like you would like that. Feel free to discuss that with me if you want to after. I would look forward to that conversation. Okay, you know what? There's so many more questions, and I'm going to be around after as well. I'm interested in your questions just as well to learn. As is Malcolm, as is Eduardo, as is John as well. Also make an effort to say hello to John and Jenny as well during the reception. And Gord, make sure Gord doesn't sneak away to get a job done or anything like that, as I know he will. Depending on you guys to do that. Let me just kind of close with a few words, and then we can adjourn our meeting. I think have I been clear enough that I truly and authentically note that we actually really are interested in hearing from you? Did that point get out there? Yeah. Okay, that's great. Secondly, there is no doubt there are going to be challenges in the future. And those challenges could be just circumstances like a COVID pandemic, who would have ever expected, but they can also be mistakes and they can be errors. And my commitment to you as chair of the board, the whole board is, we know that this is going to happen. This is, we're charting new territory. We will work to repair those. We'll work to recognize them. And Lord willing, have the humility to be able to do that with some level of grace as well. But conversely, we are asking for your patience on this front. We're asking for your prayers on this front. And we're asking for your constructive input. It's easy in an environment like this to let our frustrations start building and become us. And we're going to make every effort not to do that. And you can challenge me to the same. I'm quite capable of that kind of mindset as well, and I'll work not to have it. That's the second one. Third one, there is, just think about this, there is just such a great need. And I cannot say this over and over. In my day-to-day world, I live in a space of public affairs and politics and larger issues around euthanasia and that kind of stuff. And sometimes I wake up in the morning and go, okay, Lord, where is our country going? And that's one thing, but this Camp Fair Havens can live in that question in a very different way. We have such an important task to do. In a way, we can say our harvest moment is huge. Our harvest moment is huge, and I'm asking, will you be a part of it? And then obviously, Eduardo has kind of noted that already. In this room are many gifts, are many resources. We are a people of abundance. We have learned that, especially during the COVID time, when anyone looks at an emerging country across the world, we know that. And I would love to, if you have a specific question on how you can help, talk to Benita, talk to Tara, talk to Ed. If you have resources, financial resources that you are able to invest into and give to Fair Havens to help, that would be great. Many of you know we rely on your gifts and your support even to keep the operations of this camp in good shape. And you've been amazing. Liz, remember when I was going, Liz, how in the world did that happen during COVID? It was beautiful. And I'm asking you to do that again. Let me leave it at that. And let me just close in a word of prayer, and we will then have a reception and Godspeed to all of you. Let's pray. We're grateful, Lord, that you are the King of the universe, that you have all of history in your hands, that you know the future. and we're thankful that we can be part of the future. May we, all of us, whether it is the board of directors, whether it's seasoned siters, whether it's visitors here, whether it's staff, whether it's leadership, do this work with a sense of humility and grace and energy and persistence, knowing that it is your work. I pray this in Jesus' name alone. Amen. Thank you very much. Meeting adjourned.